What is Infrastructure First?
Infrastructure First is a citizens initiative that we want to place on the ballot in order to amend the Bend City Charter, which is like our Constitution, to require that infrastructure, that's things like schools, parks, roads, water, sewer, electrical power, be provided for any new development at the same time that the development is completed.
And it gives a window of 2 years after they start building to put in the necessary infrastructure. This is based on a pattern after the city of Wilsonville, which has what they call a concurrency policy, and that makes sure that the infrastructure keeps pace with development, and so that the livability of a community is not sacrificed as it grows, but rather is maintained, so that the reason that people move to Bend, for instance, is not lost as it grows, that the idea of Bend is maintained as it grows.
Great. And what will be the benefits of it as far as
Well,
passes?
there's a couple of things. The term concurrency is actually a planning term, and everybody knows it. It's just not outside the planning community. And sucky is the best way to describe the infrastructure we have here in Bend, because a lot of times the growth has happened and nothing has happened to the infrastructure. We've got lots of houses on the east side, particularly the southeast, and they barely have water, they don't have sewer, and the road connections are so bad that if your house catches on fire, likely it'll burn down before the fire department can get there. So that's what we don't want.
And the city's solution is just to have more building, because then they figured they'll get the building impact fees plus new taxes, property taxes, to help pay for these things. But that has not worked. On the north end of Bend, they kept approving development on the north end of the parkway, and they just did so without fixing the roads or allowing for the traffic. And so now the State Department of Transportation has come in and has put in a de facto moratorium on new construction because it is such a mess up there traffic-wise. And it's a big problem to fix, but the city did it to themselves on this, and it's because they did not plan for the adequate infrastructure for the growth that they allowed to happen on the north end of Bend.
And that, basically what ODOT is doing is very particularly infrastructure first. Let's have the infrastructure before we have the growth. And it's very interesting to note that ODOT adopted that policy about a year after our initiative got going. So we don't know whether the two had anything to do with each other, but it certainly makes sense, and they can certainly do it from this perspective only of the state roads. They can't do it within the city.
And now the irony is that Juniper Ridge, which is this master plan development up in the north end of town, they can't add to it anymore now because the State Department of Transportation says that they would impact Highway 97 traffic. So the city was counting on Juniper Ridge as this huge new tax base to help fund projects in Bend, infrastructure projects in Bend. Now they can't even do that. It's because they did not plan the infrastructure before. So that's our big issue, and we're trying to sell as well, is that better planning. You can't keep approving something without the infrastructure. Like on the west side of Bend, developers wanted to put in Northwest Crossing, which eventually became Northwest Crossing, but the hearings officers said that was not going to fly because there was too much traffic on the side of town, and the roads and the intersections couldn't handle it. So the developers came up with a plan to put in the roundabouts and the Southern River Crossing Bridge that they paid up front, and then they're reimbursed later. So it works opposite of the impact fees, or SDCs, we have now. And whereas they pay $13,500 per home as they build. That's what we'd like to see in the rest of Bend, is that create these pockets where, we have a big problem, say on Reed Market or Murphy Road, those corridors, say, hey, we can't build anymore unless we all get together to pay to fix the problem. And I think that's a reasonable solution.
The bottom line is infrastructure first means rich developers, because if you provide developments that have all the facilities in them, like schools and parks they sell out very quickly. And if you want to take a look at how not to do it, go to the northeast side, and I think that Barb may have showed you some of those houses that are vacant. There are now 5,000 vacant houses in Bend, and most of them are in these lousy developments that don't have any amenities. And so why would you want to move there unless you had to? Which is, of course, when they were being built. That's the way it was going.
And so, could you, both of you, I guess, at different times, define infrastructure in the way that you mean in one short sentence?
Infrastructure means roads, water, sewer, storm drains, parks. We also include schools. The city right now, as most cities in Oregon, do not consider schools part of the basic infrastructure of a community. We think that most people look at as public schools as an integral part of the community and part of the infrastructure. So that's what I consider that.
Yeah, and what you'll find is actually there are separate districts. American government can get very confusing, particularly to foreigners that have centralized systems. But here in Bend, we have both the park district and the school district that are part of the city, but sometimes larger and sometimes not. It just depends on, it can be all very confusing, but the bottom line is that because the city's permitting authority is absolute, the city can require that a school be in the subdivision and that a park be in the subdivision, or they won't approve it. So it doesn't matter where the funding source is supposed to come from. It is within the city's authority to make sure that all of the amenities exist within a development.
And then another point I want to make is that infrastructure, as we put it in, as we grow, extends the livability, which makes the community more valuable. If the community is more valuable, then the tax base rise, and the city collects more money in the long term. So it makes better sense to make the community better as you grow, because it becomes more valuable and more self-sustaining in that sense because of the increased tax revenue.
And more people want to move here, which means they can sell more houses.
Right.
And could you talk about the beauty of Bend as it is, and the different ways that could be compromised if Infrastructure First isn't initiated?
Well, there's plenty of examples right now. We talked about the north end of town. It makes it that you don't want to go through the north end of town to go to Redmond, for instance, because it's just it's just a big traffic jam. Murphy Road corridor, all the traffic is funneled through that corridor, and it can't handle it right now. And they just keep adding more homes to the mix and not improving the road. They were supposed to do it last summer, then they said this summer. Now they've postponed another 2 years. This has been going on for 25 years now on Reed Market Road. There's also the Murphy Road corridor problem. These things make those areas undesirable to live in, so therefore the property values are not going to rise as fast. And that's one of the big problems of not putting in infrastructure.
Yeah, and it's going to make, commuting's already a problem, and now that gas is so expensive, it's really interesting that when we first set up, we needed to find a bank, and so we went to Umpqua Bank, and they said, we'd really like to put a branch out somewhere in the southeast, but we can't find any place for it, because nobody wants, there are no real shopping centers or anything out there, and so it means that all the people who live out there, if they want to have any services, have to drive a long way, because none of the businesses want to move out to an area that's so unattractive. Now, you take a look at what we have over on the west side. We have these little cluster developments all over the place, and the absolutely gorgeous shopping center with the Safeway and Ray's on the other side of the street, and like 32 Starbucks, I think, are there. Take a look at Umpqua Bank. I can basically, there are like 4 Umpqua Bank branches within 3 miles of each other, all on the northwest side. So when you don't have those things, then it makes life much more difficult.